Hey guys, welcome back to the Launch Your Real Life podcast, where we help young Christians figure out how to launch into the real world. When I was first stepping out of my school journey and I was a part of a ministry and I was dating a girl that I very much wanted to marry and stepping into that first full-time job, trying to figure out how to get an apartment and all of that. Of course, I had lots of good advice, but I know that that's not the case for everybody out there. So if that's where you are, then that's what this podcast is all about. Today, I'm really excited because I'm going to play you guys a conversation that I had with a good friend of mine named Thomas McCarty. He is one of the directors at the Metroplex Women's Clinic here in the DFW area. And he's going to tell us about the clinic and the services that they offer. And we also have a broader conversation about what generosity looks like. So I hope that you enjoy the conversation and get inspired to get involved with something that you're passionate about, because you're never making too little to give something. And it could even be your time, it could be some other kind of resource. But once you start working, I really encourage you to find something that you are passionate about that you can support. And we're going to have the link in the description for you if you want to be a part of donating just like $5 a month and being a part of changing some people's lives through the ministry of the Metroplex Women's Clinic. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Thomas McCarty. Well, Thomas, we have been talking about doing this for a while, and obviously you and I are good friends. We are in the same Sunday school class. And I want you to talk a little bit about, introduce yourself and what you do, what your job is, and what that work looks like day in and day out for you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you considering me worthy to be on your podcast. Definitely excited, and it's been neat to watch you the past year or so really, dive into this new adventure. And so very proud of you. Definitely follow along where I can, and you give good information. And so I'm grateful for that, certainly, in the way that you have a passion to, just invest in young Christian believers in the way that they can steward what God has given to them and just make wise financial decisions. And so grateful for that. But yeah, so for about a year now, I've been privileged to serve an organization here in town called the Metroplex Women's Clinic. And so we have 4 locations in the Arlington-Fort Worth area. We are a no-cost clinic. That means all of our clients come to us, and they don't have to pay for any of the services that we provide. We provide prenatal care, pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, limited ultrasounds, I'll say. We provide STI testing, education, everything from how to change a diaper to how to install a car seat, to how to be in a healthy relationship with your partner, how to communicate in that relationship. And what our goal is really to educate our clients and equip them to create the best possible environment for their unborn children, and if they already have any children, their born children. So we are a pro-life organization, but it goes just beyond that initial first, second, third trimester, and that initial pregnancy options period. It goes into really wanting to build a strong foundation for our clients. We are faith-based, and so we are privileged to be able to share the gospel with all of our clients as they allow us to. Some of those classes I mentioned are spiritual in nature, but we're not the church. And so we partner with local churches, and we're grateful for that. And so an ideal situation, for us is when a mother and a father come in and they're not sure what they're going to do. They choose life. They engage with us. They can actually be a part of our organization, receiving our services until their youngest child is 8 years old. And so we're excited about that. And our hope would be that they would quickly engage with one of the local Bible-believing evangelical churches that partner with us to do what only they can do while we're doing the pregnancy care and the material assistance, diapers and such, and then the classes. So that's kind of like a mile-high view. For any of your viewers that are local, they're always welcome to come for a tour. I'd love to show them one of our clinics in person and give them an opportunity to see how they can be a part of it. And as they know people, friends, neighbors, coworkers that are faithing, an unplanned pregnancy, or even a planned pregnancy, and maybe they don't have everything figured out. Maybe they're wise enough to realize that. We would love for you to send them our way, and our nurses, our trained staff will be able to walk with them as best they can.
I love that. I love hearing that whole um, the whole big picture, because there's even some things that
Mhm.
I didn't know. But one of the things that I was aware of, I didn't realize it went till eighth grade, 8 years old.
Yeah, no. So
Ah,
that's legally when we not legally, but that's formally when we have the cutoff. Admittedly, most of our clients, when you have a toddler, when you have a 4 or 5 year old, most of our services aren't going to be as relevant.
right,
Not as many 8 year olds, need some of the care that we can provide. Hopefully
sure,
they're potty trained at that point. Hopefully, they're, I guess they're working their way out of a car seat, so you're not going to need that class. But
right,
the healthy relationships, how to foster, um, you know, a, a faith awareness in them, and like I said, we don't replace the church, but we come alongside the church and really try and meet our clients where they're at. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that, you know, uh, people don't, and not all pregnancy centers do this, but we certainly do. We want to be holistic. And so, um, when you save a life that's in the womb, that's to be celebrated, that's exciting, and that's important work. However, if you just save a life and leave it at that, you're only buying 60, 70, 80 years. And so we want that 60, 70, 80 years to be as good as possible, and that's what our classes are designed to do, help build that foundation. But we want to see them have every opportunity to know Jesus Christ as their Savior and Lord,
mm,
because that's really where the life saving comes in. Otherwise, like I said, we're just buying some time, which is important and that's good. But we want to make sure that we keep our focus on sharing the gospel with everyone that allows us to.
yeah. I love that perspective, and I think that's a common criticism of kind of the pro-life point of view, is that a lot of people think that it's just like, oh, you just care about getting that baby born, and then who cares
Yeah,
about the mother? Who cares about the baby's future and everything like that? And what I'm hearing from you is that you guys really do go above and beyond. You are actively caring for mothers and families and the children beyond just getting them here, which is,
exactly.
like you said, it's huge. But I do think I love that, and that's why I've always loved the mission of the clinic, because it I feel like whatever your political ideology is,
Sure.
we should all be able to get behind supporting and giving resources to mothers and families to
Right.
make the right decisions and to actually have a positive start in life.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'll say too, just while we're knocking down stereotypes, one of the things that happened in 2022 was that in our country, United States, um, the Dobbs decision came down from the Supreme Court, and the federally protected right to access a clinical abortion went back to the states, and so it was no
Mhm.
longer a federally protected issue. In Texas, we had already put in place what was called a trigger law, and so folks here in Texas saw that there was a future perhaps where the Supreme Court would have a favorable ruling for the pro life side of things. And so what that trigger law did was it basically made it near impossible to have a clinical abortion immediately in the state of Texas. And then, sure enough, in the weeks and months that followed, that's when you saw, all the different centers that provided that close their doors within the state. And so now Texas residents would have to travel to a neighboring state that does allow that, New Mexico, Kansas, a couple others in the area, to receive that. And so, one of the things kind of since 2022, people say, well, what are you doing? So like, if you can't get that service in Texas, then why is your ministry still valuable? And don't get me wrong, we're excited, and it was a blessing for the Supreme Court to make this decision. However, that does not eliminate pregnancy terminations within the state of Texas.
Sure.
Because and this is, a different topic. I don't want to go too far down the road right now. But essentially, uh, you know, you can receive a chemical termination. And I know there's lots of House bills being used to address that, and we're excited about that. But like all things, it makes its way into the state. And so, whereas before 2022, we could tell you exactly how many people went through that process in the state, now we can't.
Yeah.
But with full confidence, we can say it's more prevalent because it's more like, it's the Amazon version of it. You can get it quickly, cheaply, and instantaneously. And so don't get me wrong, we're excited about what's happened in the past, but the real work is just beginning, and there are more challenges that are up ahead. Challenges that we're aware of, and we're grateful that the Lord has posed us as a clinic to be able to continue to meet people where they're at, offer reversals when people make choices that they might regret, and just provide them some different care. That way they're able to hopefully, live their life in the way that the Lord would have them to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's super interesting to note about how the political, space is skewing things, and I mean positively, and on the other end, like you said, I mean it's just now there's no telling, and
Yeah.
now people might be trying things unsafely, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the ministry is still needed, and that again is why I think it's so powerful, because I do try to be a responsible citizen. I try to vote in a way that is, aligned with what I believe that the Bible says, which is honestly hard to do sometimes
Mm-hmm.
in the political climate. But I do know that when I donate to a ministry like yours, that money is being used to actively help people, no matter what the politics is going on right now. And so I think I joked about this with you the other day. So, but before I jumped on the call, I did go onto the website, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and make a donation,
Oh, did you?
because I had I've made
Well,
the
thank you.
personal decision. I've made the personal decision, as I've started doing this financial coaching thing, to give a portion specifically to the Metroplex Women's Clinic. And just obviously the revenue from, like last year is minuscule. So there's just been a little tiny bit sitting in my account, earmarked, but I just haven't felt like, it's significant enough to go ahead and do it. And I got convicted about that, and I was like, well, I'm about to talk to Thomas about this. So I'm gonna go on there, and I'm just gonna go ahead and make that donation. So I'm not saying it was huge or anything like that, but
It's appreciated. It's appreciated.
I wanted to ask, shifting gears to your job specifically. You are, from the conversations we've had, you are essentially a large part of the fundraising efforts for the clinic and the operations there. Do I have that understanding right? Are you doing a lot of
For better or worse, you might have that right. So no, I'm privileged to serve as one of the directors, and so my title is director of fund development. So I do have a partner within our department, and then our CEO as well meets with donors and helps us with grants and such. But no, as a nonprofit, we rely on the generosity of our support base. We do get some support from, we have a resale store that helps equip our clients and helps fund our ministry. We have churches that have budgeted for it. There are some grants, some grants when we go in and say, hey, we're a pro-life group, they're like, all right, here you go. Some grants say, okay, well, thanks for stopping by, even though they might not say thank you.
yeah.
So, we try to, navigate that well. That way we can, steward resources that are given to us and use that to the best of our ability.
Right. Do
But the
you?
cost to so to onboard a new client, and so someone that is so this isn't all of them, but the teen mom that's facing the unplanned pregnancy, cost to reach her to let her know that we're available, because we have to market on TikTok, because that's because there's other things being marketed to her on TikTok,
Mm, I didn't
and
even
so we
think
need to
about
make
that.
sure
Wow.
that we're yep. So we have to make sure that we're there that way, because things can move very quickly in this situation for them. And
Hmm.
so we have to make sure we're there. So to be available to her, to give her the ultrasound, to give her the initial consultation, to have the initial materials for her, to have the uh, you know nurses and stuff like that. The cost is $1,200 to reach one what we would consider abortion vulnerable client.
Okay. 1,200. Okay, and that's a very tangible number that people can hold on to and say, okay, this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
effectively equals one person reached. And
Yeah.
so that's, $100 a month.
Yes. Good
If
math.
somebody wanted to, if somebody,
Good math. Yep.
yeah. um, and obviously, you guys would welcome any kind of recurring donation.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and I think, that's something we can talk about too. But I think that it's important to give, in in line with the spirit as the spirit leads, and sometimes that's a one-off thing. And sometimes it's like it's realizing that your power can come from your commitment, and so $5 a month, you know, might in the long run, well, it will in the long run be more than like a $50 donation or what have you, just at one time. And as somebody who deals with a lot of budgets and stuff, it's amazing what you can actually fit in when you have a budget that actually makes sense for your life
Right.
and allows you to do that. Rachel and I have, of course, we tithe. We have some people who are missionaries in different areas that we support. Not, we don't fully fund anybody's, mission, but we can be a small part of it. And I'm hoping that as I've even got a few more clients lined up now, that as that revenue, small or large, comes in, I can be a more consistent donor
Sure.
through the business. Um, but
Well,
that's
and
good to have
one,
that number, that.
yeah. Well, and on our end of things, there's lots of benefits to being a faith-based organization. First and foremost, that the individuals that get to serve there have a really good eternity ahead of them. So that's the best thing, of course. But bring it down to dollars and cents. It is, um, as an organization, we do know who we are serving. We know why we are serving Him, and we know that he allows us to serve him. So we are very prayerful as an organization. We're very gospel oriented, and so since we understand and have confidence that all the resources in the world are really the Lord's,
Right.
and we have the confidence that our mission is still relevant today. We have the confidence that God has put us in these communities at this time to meet the needs of these mothers and fathers. Why wouldn't He help us fund it? Now, that doesn't mean I don't get to go to work. That doesn't mean I don't write grants. That doesn't mean I don't sit down with donors. But that does mean that, unlike another organization who's just out here doing good work, which is great, there
Right.
might be a little bit more stress. Are we going to be able to make payroll this week? Are we going to be able to keep our doors open? We are alleviated from some of that pressure because we know that the Lord has called us to this. It doesn't mean we're going to be around till Jesus comes back. There might be a day when, and actually it'd be a great day that our work is no longer needed because, nobody's even fathoming having pregnancy termination, and everyone's a really great parent and they don't need any classes and all that fun stuff. But until that time comes, and until the Lord tells us we need to be doing something else, we have that confidence. And so, for me as someone that does sit down with donors and potential donors, and has relevant, um, uh, authentic and real conversations about what our needs are. It's not a burden. It's inviting them to be part of blessing someone else,
Mm,
and recognizing that, kind of like you got the story of Esther, and her brother Mordecai said, well, if you don't meet this need of our people at this time, know that the Lord has ordained for this to happen, and someone else will meet it. And
right.
so, not that I'm telling donors that, not that I'm saying, hey, if you don't do it, someone else will. But there is truth to that, because
Right.
the Lord has allowed us to exist as an organization for 42 years. And by his grace, this year we'll have served 150,000 client.
Wow.
And so why wouldn't he continue to allow us to serve if we're focused on him, and if we're doing the work that's relevant to his kingdom, and I believe we are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, do you ever, now that is the perfect mindset to have, and it um, it's a mind shift from, you know, like, we need this, to, hey, we're inviting you to be a part of what God is doing. And it's the same thing in our local churches. God doesn't need our tithe, but he's offering us that ability to worship him in that way. Same thing with you guys. You're inviting people to join the story of serving 150,000 clients and mothers and children and families. I mean, that's crazy, and that's a great story to be a part of. Do you ever find yourself, have you ever, you don't have to tell me about a specific situation, but is it sometimes hard, or is everybody pretty much like, when you show up and knock on the door, are they already like, we've already decided to
We
pull out the
decided.
wallet, or
I mean, if I can get them to pick up the phone, that's the first challenge sometimes.
yeah.
But it's all over the map. I think people. So I'll give you this example. We had a community leader in the clinic earlier this week, and someone that had been in the space years ago, has been around in the community, well-known person in the community for many years. Hears about Metroplex regularly. Um, is connected to people who are on our staff. Uh, but upon actually coming and seeing the space and hearing what it is actually do, several times it's like, wow, I didn't know y'all did that. I didn't know you had classes. I didn't know that cared for them in such a way as this. I didn't know, I thought you were just this. I'm just so proud of you guys. I'm so proud, that you guys are here, and, that you had one clinic before and these were your scope of services, but you saw the need to meet other. Man, I'm just so proud and so grateful, and we want to engage with you more. And so we have situations like that quite a bit.
Mhm.
Even earlier this evening, before this other but before the podcast, I was at the clinic and gave a tour to a group of young adults, from another local church, and said, hey, guys, want to come and see the space? Certainly we would be grateful, and we need people to support us. Again, going back to understanding what the Lord has given us, but also, I see the database and I see the ages of our donors, and well, I know how long people tend to be able to be a donor, and so there is a very real, okay, we got to make sure that younger folks, that are entering the workforce, uh, as the Lord allows and leads them to be generous to us, that they are, because Miss Sally ain't going to be around forever. Um, well, she is going to be around forever. She's just not going to be able to write a check
Right.
forever.
Right.
um, but uh, but yeah, no, I mean, it just, when they understand the scope of what we do, and we give them the real data. Hey, this is what it costs. That could change in the future if we do more services. That could, there's different things. Hey, we've got a specific need that's come up. Um, and this is the cost for it. Is this something that you think that you'd be able to be joyful uh, about participating in? Because personally, as a Christian and as a um, and just as a person, I don't want to guilt people. I don't want to twist their arm. I
Of
don't want
course.
them to feel like, oh, here it comes. I want them to see my name on the phone and be like, oh, I wonder what Tom's going to tell me about. And even if it's hey, I need X amount of money for this, or I'd like X amount of money for this, that they can prayerfully and joyfully consider, is this something that the Lord would have us uh, meet at this time? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay.
Yeah. Do you and you've talked about it a little bit, so I don't want to ask you to be redundant, but I do have, some listeners that, are in that age where they're doing summer mission trips
Yeah,
or um, doing some kind of fundraising for something mission related. And I know that some of them struggle with, and I mean, I know that because I had to do that multiple times, and I really struggle with, um, you know, uh, and it goes to a mindset problem, I think, because it's like you feel like you're putting yourself out there, right? You're
mm,
saying, please help me go. And sometimes you're like, are they just thinking that I'm going to go on this, vacation essentially, or what have you? But, what's some advice you would give to somebody who is trying to fundraise for themselves for some kingdom related, mission that they're trying to
yeah,
do? And is there any advice you have from your experience?
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I think a couple things come to mind. First, have before you go and talk to other folks, um, have the confidence that it's something that the Lord is calling you to. So you
Mm,
and I both know, mission trips can be helpful for the people, and they can also be helpful for you as a person. And
right.
so, and it just depends, And so that part doesn't really matter to me because, I've known a bunch of people that have gone out on a mission trip, and were they effective for that community? Yeah. Was it great? That's fine. Did it really need to cost $5,000, or could someone local have done that? Yeah, probably. But did that person come back with a new appreciation for God's creation, for God's people, for the work that they might do? Yeah, and then that's definitely worth investing in. So certainly, I would tell someone, ensure that the specific thing that you are looking to have funded is something that the Lord allows. And sometimes there'll be a clear answer. Sometimes there won't be a clear answer. And if there's not a clear answer, then I think you do have the right to choose, what you think would honor the Lord best.
Yeah.
Because the Lord does give us options. And so, Lord, I don't feel like you're saying yes or no if I should go on this trip to New York City, and so I
Right.
don't know, what should I do? And you're hearing crickets. Well, I think cost is $1,000. I have 200 of it that I could already apply myself. I have 10 people that I could go ask for the rest of it. Yeah, you know what? I think let's go ahead and try and make this happen because I haven't heard the Lord say no. I have a strong foundation and I have a clear, there's a plan of what I'm doing there. Whatever that might be, reaching inner city kids, helping a church plant, whatever. When it's like, well, I don't know, we'll figure out when we get there. Oh, that's harder for, I'm not going to fund you if you say, hey, I'm called to New York, but I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. We'll figure it out. Be like, okay, well, but
Call me
that's
when you
just
figure
me.
it out. Yeah,
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 when
yeah.
you figure it out, yeah, give me a call, give me a call. So that's one thing I would say. And then the other thing I would remind, a young Christian about that. Um, so in scripture, we see Jesus anointed at Bethany. And so we see how the jar was broken and it was used on him, and the disciples had a criticism of that, saying, Lord, uh, why did you allow this woman, this woman, she's not one of us. She wasn't in a position of leadership. She shouldn't be making the decision on how this money should be spent. It could have been, used for the poor. Why are you allowing it to waste it on us? Well, Jesus then rebukes them and says, hold on, guys. What she has done is a beautiful thing for me. And of course, it points towards the burial and resurrection, and it's prophetic,
Hmm.
and it's a picture of the gospel. But if we look at it at just that sense, the Lord had given her that resource, and she chose and she felt convicted on how to use it to worship Him. And so, when the Lord convicts us on how to use our resources, then we should act.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's, in that same story where he says, "You'll
Yeah,
always have the poor with you."
exactly.
You'll always, and so in a sense, we're living that out, but in
Yeah,
a much more real sense, everything that we have is from the Lord.
yeah,
The Lord is the one that gives us the ability to get wealth, and so
yeah,
it all belongs to Him. And so pouring everything out at His feet is it
yeah.
to us, it looks like living responsibly within our means
Right,
and generously giving to His kingdom and
right,
causes that support that kingdom. So I
right.
love that story. I love that story because you know, it's it's all about the heart. It's all
Yeah,
about the perspective.
absolutely. And then the other thing I'll say, I kind of touched on in a minute there, but someone that's looking to raise money for a kingdom endeavor, I would say also, just from a practical standpoint, how are you investing in it as well? So don't come to me saying, "Hey, I need all this money. I need $5,000, and also I bought a new uh, truck this year. I don't really need a new truck. I wanted it, or hey, I need this, but the PS5 or whatever PS whatever we're on, it's coming out, and so man, I gotta get that. So yeah, this is why I need all this money. That's not to say that you should be underwriting or that you should deprive yourself of needed things or even some wanted things, but before you go and start asking other folks to invest in you and fund you, think about what the Lord would have you do on your own. And that could look a lot of different ways. And so if it's someone like it's a college student, say, maybe they're going to go spend a summer somewhere, but that means they're not going to have a summer job. That means they're going to leave their place of employment maybe, and for 2.5 months, they're not going to be making any income. Well, that person I wouldn't expect to contribute to their own funding, because in a way they are, because they could be somewhere else making some money to go have fun. But somebody that has resources yet is allowing other people to use them and not using their own, I would caution against that, just because
Mhm.
it it just doesn't present well to people that are looking to invest in you. It doesn't honor the Lord. And in some ways, so these people that are being generous to you, you have to think, why are they being generous to me and not someone else and not something else?
Mhm.
So if Thomas, if I have $100 to give, and that's, Mackenzie and I looked at the budget and we're like, hey, we can give $100 this year, we give more than that, but anyway, $100 this year to charitable organizations. How are we going to dispel it? And Bobby, you come to me and ask for 50 of that, and we give it to you. And really, you probably should have asked us for 25, because 25 is sitting in your pocket and you could have used that. Well, then that means
Mhm.
that was $25 that should have gone to another person going on mission. It should have gone to Metroplex. It should have gone wherever. And so that's
Right.
not to say that you can't be generous, or ask for generosity. That's not to say that you can't have people underwrite your stuff. That's just saying, think carefully about it, because these resources you're asking for, they're not mine, they're the Lord's. And so you need to be stewarding on the end of asking, to make sure that it's going to be money well spent, and that everyone, the giver and the receiver, both understand whose money it is, and both are in agreement that it's best helping the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever thought of it in terms of you know, you are a part of stewarding someone else's money that they're stewarding for the Lord. It's kind of, it makes the impact is deeper, the caution, the with
Yeah,
which we approach that is real. And I think that the Lord gives us generous people in life, but he also gives us skills. He gives us unique abilities to kind of help make it happen. So I don't, if somebody's going on a mission trip or whatever, and they have all year, we see it in our church all the time. Somebody's like, well, I'll take photos, I'm good
Yeah.
at photography. I'll do photos for your family. I'll babysit.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was fundraising for a trip to China, and I wrote some songs and recorded in my bedroom a CD, and it wasn't the greatest quality, but I sold CDs, to try to help fundraise, and so I do think that there is an element of putting yourself in and investing in it
Yeah.
yourself, even
Yeah.
though there's usually an element of like, look, I can't do this by myself. I need
Right.
the Lord to provide through other people.
Yeah.
And
And you shouldn't always have to do it yourself.
for
That's
sure,
why
for
we see
sure.
the cooperation. But certainly it's not something that you would want to um cause anxiety. I wouldn't want anyone,
Right.
oh man, am I using Miss Sally's money well? Like don't let it stress you out. But
For
also
sure.
just be thoughtful about it, be prayerful about it, and ensure that you're being appropriate. Like I said, it doesn't make sense. If you can fund 10% of your trip on your own, and it's a sacrifice, not an intimidating sacrifice, but a sacrifice still, then it's a lot more. The Lord's going to honor your request for other people to be sacrificial to you, is my belief.